I'm back. Season 3, episode 3. Welcome back, everyone, to the Save the Best for Last podcast. Oh, it's been a long month since we last spoke, and I'm really excited to get into all that today has to offer, which is really a reflection of the last 40 days, plus or minus. Which, for those that don't know, I celebrate both Ramadan and Lent, which is probably confusing to quite a few people, but that's neither here nor there. So today's episode, even for those that don't celebrate either, is bigger than religion. Yes, it does include a lot of aspects of religion in it. So if that's something that doesn't align with you, that's okay. And I understand if you don't want to listen to this episode. However, per usual, this podcast is really a reflection of my journey, and I tell people all the time, this is my journal in words, and I'm really excited to dissect this aspect of my life. So thank you for joining us for season 3, episode 3 of the Save the Best for Last podcast. Let's get into it. So for quite some time now, especially within the last 6 years or so, I have heavily practiced both Lent and Ramadan, which is a really, really special time for me. And let's, first and foremost dive into the spirituality component of this conversation. I, interestingly enough, if that's a word, am not religious, which again is probably even more confusing. I don't believe in organized religion. I believe in spirituality and higher power, which again, contrary to worldly belief, call it God, call it Allah, it's the same person in my opinion. It's not even really my opinion. Like, if you believe in higher being, like, regardless of what I believe versus what you believe versus what your best friend believes, if there is higher power, regardless of what we all think it is, there is only one answer, right? And that's not really what I want to make today about, but I just, for context, want to be very clear about I'm not religious. I don't believe in organized religion. I believe spirituality should be practiced on a singular basis. I think it's okay to practice it with, groups of people. However, I think it's something you should discover and decide on your own and not have the influence of other people or the judgment. And that's been really hard for me throughout my life. For those that don't know, I don't think I've talked about it much on my podcast, and there's aspects of this I don't think I ever will talk about for multiple reasons, but I grew up in the Catholic Church, which was a very interesting experience for me. Morally and fundamentally, a lot of the bricks that lay down the foundation of my life were created in the Catholic Church. And there's good aspects of that, and there's really bad aspects of it. And, that specific organized religion group is, what kind of led me to the decision to not, as an adult, want to be a part of organized religion. And again, if you are a part of that, I don't think it's a bad thing whatsoever. It's just not something that aligns with me morally. Therefore, I really celebrate all different religions, walks of life, spirituality. I just believe in higher power, meaning God. I don't get into the nitty gritty of it. That's why they're, funny enough, as I talked about being in Catholic school, I was in Catholic school, kindergarten through 5th grade, and then starting in 6th grade, I transitioned into public school. And that transition was really eye-opening to me as far as who I am, who I want to be, what I want, what I don't want. And funny enough, throughout high school, spiritually, religiously, I was more involved with Islam. And that also showed me another aspect of religion and a religious group. But Obviously, every religion has its nuances and is different, but being exposed to so many different religious groups, I really recognize, like, it's so interesting to me how, there is, I don't want to say feuding between groups, but I feel like it's very much so separated, when at the end of the day, we all are just trying to have faith in life, right? And hope in life. And that's why I think it's so bizarre, especially during the time of my life where I was practicing Islam, is living in the States. I recognized as a young person how much negativity that group of people faced. And it's something that really resonated with me because it is such a beautiful, peaceful religion. And it's interesting that, certain optics can change people's perspective on an entire group of people. And, that goes with a lot of different aspects of life and a lot of different groups. Maybe that's dependent on religion, race, gender, sexual orientation. Like, there's so many aspects of that, but that's something that really resonated with me and, kind of bothered me about, not about the religion, but about people's perception of that religion. And that's why, even though, like, I've led this conversation with stating I'm not religious, I do align quite well with Islam in general, but not to the point where I would claim that, I guess, is my point here. But anyway, back to Catholic school and being raised that way. Obviously, for most branches of Christianity, Lent is a very big time of the year, just like Christmas. And I remember Lent being so significant and so important in all the different aspects. And just as a young girl, being so excited and thinking it was such a joyful, spiritually enriching time. And it's funny how that, as I got older, transcended into, celebrating both that and Ramadan, and it being very similar. And, just dissecting Lent, just, Palm Sunday and Ash Wednesday and Good Friday and all these different parts of the spiritual journey within Lent was a really, really, really magical time. And although my feelings and my perception on the Catholic Church isn't necessarily magical, I do have gratitude and appreciation for the spirituality it brought out of me, right? And this year was so interesting because they lined, and that's the first time in my lifetime that that's ever happened, where Lunar New Year, which is how Ramadan falls, and Lent and Ramadan, obviously, all fell at the same exact time, same 24 hours. And it was magical. It really was. And I'll never forget, I had just gotten back I was in California for a couple weeks, and then I came back to Boston, and we went immediately, days later, into Year of the Horse, Ramadan, and Lent. And I've really felt a spiritual difference in my life as far as these things go, because I see my life, and I'll dissect this throughout the episode, and how I've been able to probably handle things differently than I would have in the past. And obviously I make these decisions at the end of the day, but I think participating in the aspects of these two spiritual enriching times really gives you a newfound perspective on the place that you're in life. And for years now, during Lent, I've given up social media across the board. So no Instagram, no TikTok, no Snapchat, no nothing. And it's very, very difficult at first. Very, very difficult. But it's funny now, as we get to the near end of Easter, Lent, with that day being Easter, I don't even want it back. And I found this to be the same case last year, where I get so comfortable with it and I like being disconnected and I like being unreachable, which is a weird thing to say because at first it's so interesting giving it up, because for me personally, that's a lot of the way I communicate with people and with the world and how I feel involved in what's going on. And it's that sense of belonging. And, there was nights where I literally cried because I live in a city where I don't know many people. I have, I'm blessed with a lot of friends, but I don't really have a community here. I do. I don't want to discredit the people I have here. Everyone I have here I absolutely love and adore. But I've only lived here for 9 months, so it's obviously not what I had in Ohio. And coming back from LA, where I got to see, a group of my nearest and dearest friends who I love dearly, and leaving that to come back to here to not have social media to see what any of them are doing, any of my friends in Ohio are doing, and being completely disconnected from the world, it's very difficult, and it makes you really fixate on areas of your life that maybe need some attention. And that's difficult. And I think the whole point of both of these practices, Ramadan, Lent, you may participate in other spiritual inclining times within your lifetime. And it's not supposed to be easy. I really want to lead with that, because even, we'll dissect the fasting component with this, but people think I'm nuts. Oh my God, I'm yawning so much. I need to wake up, sister. Fasting, that's such an interesting topic, which I want to really take time to talk about this, but people think it's insane. And that's another thing about Islamic culture that's, kind of bothersome to me, is it's a lot of times during Ramadan, it just ended and it was a beautiful time. People are really weird about it, as far as if I get breakfast with a group of friends and I can't eat, or I get lunch and I can't eat, or I'm like, oh, can we do dinner at 7 so I can break fast with eating with my friends? Again, don't get it twisted. There's a lot of people in my life that are very supportive and understanding, but there's a lot of people that make it an ordeal when my energy wants to be on the practice. And what I mean by that is, obviously fasting is difficult, especially the first week, but it's funny, when I stopped fasting, I didn't have an appetite, which is, by design. But the point of not eating is to alter your mindset on what should be the focus. At least for me, there's multiple reasons of fasting. It's, to feel for other people that aren't as privileged to be eating to the extent that you probably are, which is a big portion of it. But a lot of times when I'm hungry, or when I hear my stomach or anything of that nature, I think of the gratitude of the life I get to live day in and day out. And that, for me, is during Lent, during Ramadan, during anything you practice, the point. No, it's not to starve myself. No, it's not to be like, oh, look at me. No, it's not. Yes, I'm proud of it. Yes, I talk about it. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I'm hungry. Yes, I'm this. But it's a mindset. And it's discipline. And that's the other thing, is we talk about the social media and the fasting of food and social media. The biggest aspect that I would always preach to people when they're like, oh, so many people reached out to me and were like, is everything okay? They thought I blocked them because I deactivated my account, so you can't even find them. And people thought I was mad at them or something was wrong. And I'm like, no, I'm fasting. And they're like, oh, okay. They always immediately think something's wrong when you go off the grid. And I think that's such that speaks for our culture and our world, because who are you without social media presence, right? And again, that's another perspective to have, is what exactly we are, to an extent. greedy and don't even realize, like, even with the food aspect, there's people that don't eat for days, right? Just because they don't physically have the means to eat for days. Fasting during Ramadan is just while the sun's out. Like, you just don't eat while the sun is out, not you don't eat the entire 30 days. And it's just, it really is such a beautiful time. And I think having the stamina to be able to hold yourself accountable is so important. And that's why this whole time I led with discipline. For me, it's not, yeah, it's hard, don't get me wrong, but how strong is your mind? How strong is your soul? How strong is your being? Are you able to withstand? And that's why I tell people all the time, yes, I associate with both of these religions, but no, I don't practice. But I do practice both of these times because I think the intention behind them are so important. That's why I don't think religion's a bad thing at all. I think the intentions are very pure and a beautiful, beautiful thing. And maybe down the road in my life, my perspective will shift. I can't say what will transpire, but what I will say is, what is it doing for you as a human, and how is it affecting you and your lifestyle and those around you? And I found myself not only very disciplined, but very withholding a lot of gratitude for what I have in life, even if that's just a meal. And I think that's an important lesson. And even if you don't want to call it Ramadan or you don't want to participate in Lent, I get that. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be spiritual. But giving something up for the sense of gratitude is such a vital, vital thing. And I will always preach that to people. Because so many of us, even like, it's not like I live a very blessed life. Let me make it very clear. But it's not like I'm a billionaire or I've been handed everything. Like, life's been very difficult for me, and I'm very transparent about that. But I can eat whatever I want. I can drink whatever I want. I have the ability to, career-wise go wherever I want. Like, I could list thing after thing after thing of just things at my disposal. And majority of people can't say the same. And therefore, this time of year, I take the time to let go of things that don't really serve me. I don't want to say they don't serve me. They're not a necessity within life, to remind myself how blessed and highly favored I am to live this life. And I think everyone is. I think everyone can sit down, take a step back, disconnect from the world for a bit, maybe fast a bit, whatever that looks like for you, and have gratitude for the life they've been blessed to live. I'll never forget, as a little girl, it's so funny talking about this because I'm giving up social media, which to a lot of people is fucking insane. Wow, I tried to go a whole episode without cussing. That didn't last. I was like, religion, no cussing. Maybe that's why that didn't work out for me. But anyway, I would give up like the stupidest stuff as a kid. I would give up things that like I didn't even really like, because it is hard. It's hard. It's very hard. Giving up something during Lent is hard. If it's something like that's a part of social media, that's a lot of people's identity. That's some people's careers. Like, for me, that is a part of my career. That's my everyday life. But I knew it'd be difficult. And every year I do the same thing because I know it's difficult. And it is difficult, but what are we talking about? Like, it's social media, But back to me when I was a kid, I remember giving up like the dumbest shit. I'm trying to think of something. I want to say one year I gave up like a type of candy, when like we didn't have candy in our house growing up. So like, Okay, like no Skittles. Girl, you have access to candy like once a month. Like what are we talking about? And that's the only thing like as an adult that I appreciate I've been able to learn from is so many people do things that are like, oh, it's a little hard, but I know a lot of people that do drinking. I'm not really a drinker, so that wouldn't be hard for me, but it should be something that's going to affect your functionality of everyday life. Like if you take the elevator every day at your job, nope, not taking the elevator all of Lent. Like, god damn, that's horrible. Well, yeah, it's hard. It shouldn't be easy. Anything that requires discipline shouldn't be easy. Like me going, oh, I'm not going to eat pork for the next 30 days. Well, you don't eat pork. So that's not hard. And it's like, the list can go on and on. But my point of this is that if you decide this is something that you think would be a positive contribution to your life, try to fast for a month. Try to not eat from sunup to sundown. Try to only eat one meal a day. Give something up for a month. It doesn't have to align with Lent or Ramadan. It can be for whatever sake you want it to be. So that is my thought as far as that goes. It's interesting. A big part of these two things are prayer, charity, and self-discipline. I would say praying is an aspect of my life, but it's not. How do I put this? Because I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I still believe in like prayer and higher power. And a lot of times that comes in form of communication of talking to myself. Obviously, if you can't tell, this podcast is me talking to myself. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm talking into a microphone that's strapped to a spatula that's shoved into the side of my couch. I wish I could make this shit up. But on the topic of prayer, I think, again, I don't want this episode to be pushing a religious narrative whatsoever because that's not something I agree with, nor do I align with. But I think being able to have hope and faith is very, very important in life, which is why I bring this up. If that's manifestation, if that's chart reading, if that's prayer, if that's organized religion, if that's church, if that's masjid, if that's synagogue, if that's temple, whatever that looks like for you, the aspect of religion that gives us hope and faith is why I think religion is a good thing in general. I don't think it's how I want to live. However, I don't think religion is a bad thing. That's why when I started this conversation and I was talking about people having bad perspectives on religion, I think it goes both ways. When I was involved in Islam, I had a lot of Muslim friends that said things about Christians that was really not okay to say. And I think that goes for every religion. I think a lot of people have negative things to say, especially right now, about Jewish people, Muslim people. I think across the board, like I said at the beginning, everyone has something to say about something that's not what they do. And that's the problem. Walk in someone else's shoes. And circling back to this episode that's around the time of spiritually fasting, are you able to walk in someone else's shoes? If you're not, well then I don't align with you. And you're probably not someone that would listen to my podcast in general. So I doubt anyone like that is listening right now. But when you're so fixated on your lifestyle and how you are and how you're from and how things are done and it has to be done this way or it's just not acceptable, I have a fundamental problem with that, which is why I'm not involved in organized religion, because I don't think anyone has the answer to anything. I think everything, even outside of religion, is a perspective. And everyone can have different perspectives, and that's okay. And when people are demoralized for having a different perspective or a different way of life is when I have a problem. And I then bring this up to transcend into the next aspect of this conversation, where recently, I think I may have talked about this, but recently I had an interaction with someone where that was a problem. And it's a big problem. Big, very big problem, because I didn't practice life in the way they did. And their reaction to that was really sickening. And it caused a really negative spiral in my life. It was a contained spiral, but it was really, really mind fucking. Because for someone to know you, get to know you, surround themselves by you, you welcome them into your life, they welcome you into yours, and then you share aspects of who you are, where you're from, how you operate, what your beliefs are, what your morals are, and them think you're lesser because of that, I have a fundamental problem with. And I bring this up because when it comes to Ramadan and Lent, I think it was a really good time for me to bring myself back to who I am and why I practice these things and why I align with both of these religions and why I'm spiritual and not religious. And I think it's really important in life to find what makes sense for you based on who you are and where your journeys let you, not about who you're around. And that's always an area of opportunity for me, is to continue to make decisions based on my moral compass, who I am, what I believe in, what I stand for, and not by those that I surround myself with. And so often in life, I hear the phrase, you are who you surround yourself with. And, in my younger, late teens, I was told that so often because that was a very trying time in my life. And I look back at photos and I look back at conversations. Oh my God, the yawning won't stop. Sorry. I look back at so many things that I'm like, oh my God, I was like this because of what I was doing and who I'm around. And that's life. You are who you surround yourself with. Like that's inevitable. And that's why you have to be very cautious of who you let around yourself. Even from a, like, both personal, professional, physical, like every aspect of your life, you're determining the future. So tread cautiously. And again, I bring this up because detaching yourself from everything and really looking from within and not seeing it through your best friend's perspective, your boyfriend's perspective, your mom's perspective, what Instagram had to say perspective, what the news is saying. What does Mac really think? How does she want to live life? How does she want to work out? How does she want to build her career? That's how you're going to get to where you're supposed to be. Because if you're living based off of, oh, well, this person said this and this no, you need to live for you. And that's why I think back to spirituality, that's what realigns you with you, because you can get very lost in other shit very easily. And you can go down a really dark path that way. And I look back at my life and I see myself going down a very, very, very dark road. And I really reflect, why did that happen? How did I get there? I had a very unique upbringing, but not that upbringing, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily reflect the outcome of my childhood. And I now have the ability to have a perspective of why I got to where I went and why I'm in such a different place now. And these times of reflection and these times of discipline hold me accountable to who I am and where I want to go. And it's hard sometimes because during fasting and during being off social media, first of all, I have no fucking clue what's going on in the world. Literally none. Like, not even, I hate bringing this up, but this is just a great example. I had no clue about the Iran bombing, right? That's just a very big example. I didn't know. How would I know? I don't have social media. That's not something, as far as my career goes, that would be I hate to say topic of conversation, but that is inevitably how I found out, but I'm completely disconnected from the world. And in some aspects, like that example, it's terrible because that's something, people around the world should know about. But in a lot of aspects, I didn't have the influence to make decisions or see things that are going to affect my perspective. And I was really able to make decisions and see the world through my eyes and not through anyone else's. And even the discipline aspect of it, it's like, okay, well, when I'm hungry, what is my mind? How can I rewire my mind to think about something else that can realign my perspective of my situation or my circumstances? So all in all, as I say all this was a very, very spiritually inclining time for me. And again, no one necessarily has to do exactly what I do. No, you don't have to not eat. No, you don't have to give something up. But I want to leave food for thought of what is it that can truly bring you back to who you are, who you want to be, and give you a perspective that only you will have and won't be influenced by those around you. So yeah, I think the reflection I have leaving this time of spiritual grounding is so important. And I continue, Easter's not quite done, so I will not be back on social media until either the 5th or the 6th. But these are very, very important times and important practices for me in my life and how I continue to grow. And I think the one theme of this podcast, it's funny, at work today, I was telling a client about my podcast and they were asking what it's about. And it's a hard question to answer because it's not consistent, which is, if you look up, how to make a successful podcast, my avenue is not the one to go. And the point of this isn't necessarily to like blow up and this be my means of life. Don't get me wrong, I would be so here for that, but this is more for me and for those that can listen to this and it can truly help them see life from a different perspective and grow as well. It's for the growth and development of myself and those that have relatability to these topics. But it didn't start there. This started as a podcast that I was interviewing people live, like a video format, and I was interviewing them and dressing them, and that was that. Then it was awesome. I honestly have more viewers to that than this. But in all honesty, I have more, I spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically get more out of these episodes than I did in all of those combined. Because that was really driven by optics rather than what I wanted, right? That was driven by who I was around, who I was surrounded by, not what really drives me to be my best me. Even speaking this out loud, I, before every episode, gather my thoughts, what I want to talk about, how I want to deliver it, whatever. But overall, I wing this shit. But even this 30-minute banter that I've had has really given me that closure of Ramadan and almost Lent that I need. Okay, what did we learn from this? What did we get out of this? What is the newfound perspective? How am I going to take what I've learned from this and apply it when I do get back on social media? Now that I am eating, like, how can I continue to be disciplined? How can I continue to grow? It doesn't end. That's the other, the big takeaway that I want people to have is that just because these practices are over doesn't mean the discipline ends, doesn't mean that the spirituality ends, doesn't mean that. And that's another thing, not to dive into a deep hole, but that's the other thing with religion is I think a lot of it is just the optics. It's what people want to see. It's like, oh, it's Lent and Ramadan. Like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm fasting. I'm this, I'm that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But then as soon as Ramadan ends or as soon as Lent ends, people turn into hellions. And it's like, okay, what was the point of that then? Like, oh, I'm going to be this perfect person during this spiritual time. And then as soon as it's over, I'm back back on my bullshit. Which again, this isn't me being judgmental. This is me being transparent about the reality of why organized religion doesn't always align with me. And I'm not saying I have a lot of Christian, Catholic, Muslim friends that, I'm not saying this is everyone. I have a lot of friends that practice, and they're never on bullshit. They're always, living for higher power and walk every day with gratitude, and they're charitable, and they're absolutely incredible people. But so many people I've been around and I've had exposure to have given me the perspective of the optics. Like, they do it for the look and because they have to, or it's because it's generational. And it's like, no, do it to better yourself. If you're going to believe in something and you're going to practice in something, do it to better yourself. And that's really the moral of the story here, is that however you practice, if you're religious, if you're not religious, if you're spiritual, if you're not spiritual, if you're going to do something, do it and get something out of it. Don't just go through the motions. I think of the analogy of like sports always, and like at practice like you're in the Super Bowl. Don't half-ass it. You're not getting anything out of that. If you don't align with the religion you've been practicing your whole life, then you probably shouldn't practice it. Oh, well, my parents, my grandparents, that's you making an excuse. So that's fine. You can make an excuse. I don't control anyone's life, but live for you. Live for the betterment and the development and the spiritual enrichment of you, not the optics, not what your parents think, not this, not that. And I get a lot of people are in complicated situations, which is why, so many people are religious for the wrong reasons. And I feel for you and I feel for that. But moral of the story is have discipline, stay humble, really define who you are and what you want based on what spiritually aligns with you. Don't let that be determined by who you're around. And I know this is, sometimes a difficult pill to swallow or a hard episode to digest because this is heavy for a lot of people. This has been a heavy topic throughout my life, so I get it. And, this has changed with time. Like even last year, this time looked a lot different for me. So at the end of the day, everything's for the betterment of your journey and your development. And I want everyone to have an understanding that when it comes to these episodes, all my episodes change so drastically dependent on the month. But at the end of the day, I really want to see people win, and I want people to be their highest self. I want people to really live for something and not just go through the motions. So if you take anything away from this episode, is that don't go through the motions. Have a purpose, have a journey, feel spiritually alive, feel emotionally alive, feel mentally alive. And if life doesn't feel like that right now, I understand it doesn't always feel like that, and not every day is going to be as good or as bad as the day before, the day after, but maybe it starts with some discipline. Maybe it starts with new spiritual practices. I'm always available for anyone to reach out to, ask questions to. I am very in support of a spiritual journey or a spiritual awakening or anything that's going to redefine you in life and help you define you and not have any perspective. I will think everyone should really live and operate their lifestyle through their own eyes and not others. So thank you for tuning in to this month's episode. I really appreciate everyone that shows love and support, especially with me not being on the internet. It's kind of hard to publicize that I'm even doing this when I don't post it because I don't have Instagram. The podcast account is still active, but all my personals are not. So you will be seeing me here within the next week or so. But Thank you again for always showing love and tuning into the Save the Best for Last podcast. It's always one of my favorite days of the year to do these episodes and be able to speak my truth and talk about my journey and things that I think I'm not the only one that walks these walks, especially on the topic of spirituality. So I hope everyone that practiced Lent or Ramadan had a spiritual enriching time. And I hope you're able to take out of it something that drives you to your highest purpose. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful April. And I look forward to seeing you guys all at the end of the month. Because as always, we save the best for last. Bye now.